Hello again, boys and girls. This is Miss Gildard, and we are going to talk today about the second half of your ELA lesson for this week, week 3. That's 9.04 Rhythm and Meaning. So here I am back on the home page again. Let's say it's Wednesday. I'm back on my home page. I'm going to click Learn, and I'm going to scroll down back to week 3. And back down to the ELA, and there it is. So rhythm and meaning, the wandering wind. That's the lesson that you started yesterday. So I'm going to click on that. And remember, I told you in the other video that you don't need to go back and click all these green arrows to get back where you left off, although you can if you don't remember what page you were on. But I know we stopped at page 6. And so page 7 is where I need to pick up today. So I'm going to just click on page 7 and it'll take me right there. Writing workshop, comma, drama. So for the rest of the ELA lesson, they're going to review commas and do some writing. And then they're also going to do a quick review of what you've learned about poetry. So this little guy here, his name is Carl the Comma. Carl the Comma is back and he is even sleepier than last time. He does more than help with the opening and closing of a letter. So commas are really important when you are writing. Commas tell you when you're reading something to make a short pause. And when you're writing, they let your reader know to make a short pause. Let's take a look at this example sentence that has no commas. I like cooking puppies and kids. What? Oh my goodness, I like cooking puppies and kids? That is not normal. What's missing from this sentence is commas. So if I scroll down to the second example here, I see Carl the Comma has added some commas now that tell me to pause. Let's read it with a really short pause where each of these commas are. I like cooking, puppies, and kids. That's a lot different. That sentence means something totally different than I like cooking puppies and kids. So do you see how important commas are when you're reading and writing? So the sentences down here show, comma Carl here, and we're going to pause every time we get to one of these commas. Now, commas separate a series or a list of items. So here's an example. I ate waffles with peanut butter, maple syrup, bananas, and sprinkles. Do you hear how I made a short little pause every time I saw Carl the Comma here? I ate waffles with peanut butter, maple syrup, bananas, and sprinkles. So the commas here are separating items in a list. The items in the list are peanut butter, maple syrup, bananas, and sprinkles. The other thing that commas do is separate describing words like adjectives. The creepy, crawly, big brown spider is my new friend. You see how I made a brief little pause every time I saw Carl the Comma. Okay, practice reading these other two sentences on your own while I point to the words. Good. We play, climb, and swing at the park. Did you hear those pauses? Did you make those same pauses when you were reading? Okay, let's try this one. Brooklyn is a creative writer who writes books, poems, and songs. Now you read that one. Good. Did you notice that you have to give these little commas a brief pause? Okay, so down here, we have a letter written by our tortoise friend, and he wrote a letter to Nineveh. And if I scroll down, you see that he keeps forgetting his commas. And the question at the end says, can you help me look for any series or lists and add commas there too? So at the very beginning, it says, greetings, Nineveh. Well, we learned in our weeks 1 and 2 ELA lessons that after a greeting, you need to put a comma. So he needs a comma right here after Nineveh. Also, I know that when you have a closing, when you're writing a letter, you need to put a comma after your closing before your name. So after sincerely, there should be a comma as well. The other thing this activity wants you to do is look through the body of the letter and see if you can find items in a list or lists of adjectives that need commas between them. So you're going to want to do that. And then if I click on the down arrow, it's going to help me out. So I'm going to make that go away, but that's what you click on to check your answers. Now it says try the activity below with some funny sentences. You will be adding commas to them to making your own sentences. So this is an activity that you can click on, and it's going to be printable. So if you have access to a printer, then you're going to want to print this out and follow the directions. If you don't have access to a printer, then on a sheet of paper or in your notebook or journal, if you've been using one, or even on a whiteboard, you can write these sentences. Now make sure that you read the directions. The directions are add commas to the correct place in the sentences. Then write 2 of your own sentences using series and commas. You notice how numbers 4 and 5 are blank? That's where you're going to create your own sentences with commas. So an example would be if you're listing 3 items in a row on a grocery list, like I need to pick up milk, comma, eggs, comma, and potatoes at the grocery store. Okay, so you can create your own 2 sentences here. Now, when they give you activities like that, you don't need to turn those in. These are not part of the assignments that I need to grade. However, when you submit your other assignments, you can turn these extra activities in. That's great for me to be able to take a look at them, but keep in mind that you don't have to. Okay, so I'm going to click on the next arrow. Better your letter. Now that you have planned and written the sloppy copy of your letter, what is your next step? So you might be wondering, wait a second, when did I do that? Well, if you remember in ELA week 1, you were supposed to have filled out a graphic organizer writing your opinion in the form of a letter. And that was all about how Tortoise should have made some different choices to better his situation. And then ELA week 2 was to take that graphic organizer and now turn it into a sloppy copy of a letter. Okay, so if you haven't done those 2 things yet, you need to go back and do that. Those are really important. Now what they're asking you to do is use that sloppy copy for this activity. Okay, so here's an example. We have an example of a sloppy copy. It says that Nineveh wrote this sloppy copy before he gave it to our little tortoise friend here. You see his example? Do you notice the arrows that I told you about in the last lesson? That means we have some slides to click through. And I see 2 circles here, so that tells me there's 2 slides. So what you want to do is read through this letter here. And then it says, can you do the same kinds of revisions with your letter? Let's see what happens if I click next. Aha! You see how Nineveh has added some edits to his letter to make it look and sound better. The things in bold print, that's a text feature we learned about, the things in bold print are the changes that he made. Okay, so you want to take a minute to read through those. And then it says, let's focus on how to make your letter better. Take out your sloppy copy, and they mean from the week 2 ELA lesson, and a colored pen so that your revisions will be easy to see. Now you can use anything you have at home, a colored pen, a marker. Maybe if you wrote your letter in pencil, you can now use a pen, or if you wrote it in pen, you can now use a pencil. You just want to use a different writing tool than you used the first time. You can write your revisions on the lines that you skipped before, before you think about making any changes. Read your letter out loud. It is really, really easy to miss your mistakes if you're reading your letter inside your head. So read it out loud to yourself or read it out loud to a grown-up or an older sibling that lives in your house. So here are the things to look for in your letter. Here's a little checklist. And do you see these green tabs? That means there are other slides for me to click through. So I'm going to click words. Here's a checklist of things for me to look for and fix in the words of my sloppy copy letter. And then sentences. Here's a checklist of things to fix in your sentences. Now, you do not have to submit your fixed sloppy copy letter. That is not an assignment that you have to turn in to Miss Gildard this week. However, you still need to do that activity because this is what we would be doing in the classroom. This is going to make your writing look better and sound better, and it's going to make you an even better writer. So if you didn't do the week 1 or week 2 assignment yet, go back and do those first. Then when you have your sloppy copy letter, then come back and do this part of the week 3 lesson. Okay, and then I don't see anything else down here, so I'm gonna click on the little next arrow. Edit to impress. Okay, so now we have an example, another example letter here, and you're gonna notice there are some mistakes. It says practice using the editing checklist. That's what they just talked about on the last page to see if you can find all of the mistakes in Ninovan's revised sloppy copy. So I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to read Ninovan's sloppy copy. And I'm going to look for mistakes with his ideas, mistakes with his words, and mistakes with his sentences, just like the checklist on the last page told me. And if you need to click on the back arrow to remind yourself what to look for, you can do that. After you do that, you can click on this tab, Sloppy Copy with Editing Marks, and it's going to show you, see, the things that he noticed that he needed to fix. But you want to really challenge yourself to look for those things yourself first. It's like a word hunt or like a puzzle. You want to try to figure it out first before you look at the answers. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here and it says share it. Now again, you do not need to turn this assignment in, but take the time to go back and revise and edit your own sloppy copy. Look for words you forgot to capitalize, words you might have spelled wrong, missing words you accidentally left off in a sentence, or maybe you wrote a word twice by accident. Think about better words that you can use. If you find yourself repeating the same word over and over again, what's a different word you could replace it with in a couple of the spots in your letter? Okay, so you want to do that to make your writing look and sound even better. And that's going to take a little bit of time. So even though you don't have to submit that to me to grade this week, you don't want to skip doing that step. Okay, so let's click on next. Exit card, try it. Find another poem to read. After you read the poem, look for alliteration or rhyming patterns. Share this poem with a friend or family member. So I actually have a poem that I'm going to share with you guys. And while I read it to you, I want you to listen for alliteration and rhyming patterns. And I want you to look for them in the poem too. And then after that, you can go and find another poem around your house. Remember, you can find lots of poems online. I just searched for one of my favorite poets that writes children's poems, Shel Silverstein. So I'm going to switch here to the screen that I'm sharing with you and share that screen. There it is. Hopefully you can see it now. This poem is called The Oak and the Rose. So you can follow along. The Oak and the Rose is the title right here. You can follow along while I read. An oak tree and a rose bush grew, young and green together. talking the talk of growing things, wind and water and weather. And while the rosebush sweetly bloomed, the oak tree grew so high that now it spoke of newer things, eagles, mountain peaks, and sky. I guess you think you're pretty great, the rose was heard to cry, screaming as loud as it possibly could to the treetop in the sky. And you have no time for flower talk, now that you've grown so tall. It's not so much that I've grown, said the tree. It's just that you've stayed so small. So did you notice alliteration? Let's look through that first. Look through the lines in this poem. Can you find any lines that have a good example of alliteration? Remember, alliteration is when there's words in a line that all start with the same beginning sound. Take a moment and look for that. Did you find one? In the fourth line down, right here, wind and water and weather. What is the same beginning sound that repeats? That's right, it's w, w. Wind, water, weather. Good job. Now can you find a good example of rhyming? Okay, I hope that you were able to find some examples, but I'm going to show you the first one I notice here. Young and green together, wind and water and weather. The second half of the word together is gether, and that rhymes with weather. Together, weather. They both end with the same rhyming chunk. So I want you to find an example of a poem around your house that you can share with your family and friends. Okay, so I'm going to click next. What did I learn? Now remember, the what did I learn is the lesson summary page. It's not quite the end of the lesson, but if I click on my progress, you'll notice I'm getting very, very close. Okay, this is just going to summarize some of the things that you did in the whole ELA lesson, both yesterday and today. And then at the end, it says self-check review. So it says listen to the audio clip and choose the correct spelling that you hear for this word. And if you notice down here, it says slide 1 of 5. So after you correctly answer the first one, then you'll click next. It's grayed out right now because I haven't picked an answer yet. So if I play this, did you hear that? It says enough. Enough. Which one of these is the correct spelling for enough? Did you pick this one? Let's see. Great work. That's correct. So I'm going to click OK, and then now I can click on next and go to the next one. So you're going to do that for all 5 slides as a little review. And I'm going to click the next arrow. This is the last page. You always know when you're at the last page for a lesson because it starts with, what is my assignment? Now this week, your assignment is complete the 9.04 Rhythm and Meaning, the Wandering Wind quiz. There is not an assignment for you to print out or write out and submit on a submit assignment page. This week's ELA assignment is just the quiz. Also, the final page of the lesson also has a lesson wrap-up. So when you come to this page, you know you're done. If I click on my progress, you see there's no more pages after this. Now, if I were to keep clicking through, it's going to take me further to the next lessons, and you might not be able to complete those until the district opens them up. So you don't want to try to do that. You want to stop here where it says, what is my assignment? Now, to get to this quiz, I can scroll down and click on next down here, or I can go back to the modules page and click on the link for the quiz. Now remember, the quiz is the one with the rocket ship. But if I just click next, it's gonna take me to the page to take the quiz. Do you see that? Every time you take a quiz that's online like this, whether it's a pre-test or a quiz, you can try 3 times to do the very best. Here it says allowed attempts 3. So you can try to take this quiz 3 times to get the highest score possible. And then that's it. You're done with ELA for this week. So I hope that helped you guys out a little bit. I hope you got some good practice with the spelling patterns that you guys have been learning about. And I hope that you enjoyed the poems that they gave you this week and you learned a little bit more about rhythm and rhyming words and alliteration. And I will see you guys later.